Hey, so get this. For ages, I bought into the whole marriage thing, you know? Partnership, building together, supporting each other. The classic New York love story. For years, that was my life with Jessica. She was my world. I worshipped her, respected her, made sure she knew she was adored. We were living the Upper East Side dream. Fancy dinners, Central Park strolls, the whole 9 yards. But somewhere along the line, things started to change, real slow, like a New York minute in reverse. Not a big blow-up, no screaming match on Fifth Avenue. It was gradual, subtle, like the seasons changing in the city. Blink and you miss it. The woman I fell head over heels for, the one who used to treasure our bond like it was a winning lottery ticket, started to fade. Effort vanished. Reciprocation of affection, zero. Appreciation? Replaced by this crazy entitlement, like my love and attention were just things she was owed. Like taxes in this city, not something you cherish and give back. At first I brushed it off. Stress, maybe. New York will do that to you. Maybe she was burnt out, like everyone else hustling in this town. Kept telling myself, it's just a phase. She'll snap out of it. Wishful thinking. She didn't snap out of it. Instead, she started acting like she was better than everyone, better than me, better than our whole damn marriage. Stopped talking to me like a husband, more like some lucky fanboy grateful to be in her presence in her Tribeca loft. Compliments? Expected, like the doorman holding the door. Any effort I made to make her happy. Treated like the absolute minimum, the price of admission. Meanwhile, she was putting in less and less. The whole balance between us went sideways, totally one-sided, with me carrying the entire weight of our penthouse view relationship, all alone. Then came the night. Ordinary Wednesday, nothing to write home about. We were in the living room overlooking the city skyline, talking about weekend plans when the conversation took a sharp left turn, like a cabbie missing an exit. I made a simple comment about how relationships are a two-way street, need effort from both sides, you know? No anger in my voice, just a casual observation, like stating the weather. Her reaction. Man, it was like getting blindsided by a subway train. She scoffed, rolled her eyes like I was some idiot tourist, and with this unbelievable confidence she said, "Let's be real. I am the real prize in this marriage." I just stared at her, speechless, like time froze in Times Square, waiting for a wink, a smirk, anything to show she was kidding. Nothing. Dead serious, cold as a winter night in Central Park. That's when it hit me, like a ton of bricks falling off a skyscraper. She actually believed it. Deep down, in her head, I wasn't her partner, her equal. I was something to be won, something she possessed, something I was supposed to constantly be proving myself worthy of, like trying to get into some exclusive club in meatpacking. And that's when it all clicked, like the final piece of a messed-up puzzle. For years, I'd bent over backward to make her feel valued, treated her like she was the most special woman in New York, and in return, she'd convinced herself she was above me, that my role was to chase her, to beg for her crumbs of attention, to fight every damn day just to keep her from walking out the door of our West Village brownstone, while she did absolutely nothing in return. It was like a switch flipped, right there in my chest. I wasn't even angry, Not in the way you'd think. No explosive Wall Street meltdown. Didn't yell, didn't argue, didn't even try to reason with her, because in that moment, I realized something way more important. She wasn't the woman I married anymore. She'd morphed into someone I didn't even recognize, let alone respect. And if she truly believed she was some untouchable prize, maybe it was time she learned just how fast a prize loses its value when nobody's competing for it anymore. So I didn't react. Just let her words hang there, heavy and unchallenged, like the silence after the last notes of a jazz show in Harlem fade away. And in that silence, a decision formed, crystal clear, like the view from the Empire State Building on a clear day. A decision that would change everything. The next morning, I woke up feeling different, lighter, clearer, like the city air after a rainstorm. Like a weight I hadn't even realized I was carrying, a ton of yellow cabs worth, had suddenly lifted. For too long I'd bought into this idea that it was all on me to keep us together. If things felt off, my fault. I had to fix it. If she was distant, I had to bridge the gap, build a damn bridge across the Hudson with my bare hands. If she was cold, I had to warm things up, like trying to heat all of Times Square with a lighter. Not anymore. If she wanted to be a prize, fine. She could sit on her pedestal, alone in her designer shoes. I just stopped. Stopped going out of my way to compliment her. Stopped showering her with attention like it was ticker tape at a parade. Stopped making all those little gestures she hadn't appreciated in years, like bringing her flowers from that fancy shop on Madison Avenue, only for them to wilt in a vase. If she expected me to chase her, to fight for her approval, like it was a seat on the subway at rush hour, she was about to be seriously disappointed. At first, she didn't even seem to notice. Carried on as usual, queen of her own little Manhattan Island, acting like nothing had changed. But I had changed, and even though she didn't realize it yet, that change was about to shake the very foundation of everything she took for granted, like a major earthquake tremor rumbling beneath the city. A week passed, then 2, then finally, she started to notice. "Did you even see my hair?" she asked one evening, all dramatic, after coming back from some exclusive salon, probably uptown. Yeah, I'd seen it. Of course. But where I once would have jumped, practically tripping over myself to tell her how unbelievably amazing she looked, like she was gracing the cover of Vogue, I just gave a neutral glance, shrugged. Yeah, looks nice. That was it. No over-the-top praise, no excessive admiration, nothing that would inflate her ego any further. She blinked, waiting for more, expecting the usual performance. But I'd already moved on, mentally checked out like a tourist leaving Penn Station. And that was just the beginning. I stopped texting her all day long, those "hey, just checking in" texts, like I was her personal assistant. Stopped asking, "Do you need anything?" Every time I grabbed coffee from that overpriced place in Soho. Stopped being her constant 24/7 validation machine. Most importantly, I stopped reacting to her little digs, her subtle jabs, her constant needling. For the first time in our marriage, Jessica wasn't the absolute center of my attention, the sun around which my world revolved. At first, she acted like it didn't bother her, like she was above caring about such petty things. But I saw the cracks forming, like fissures in the sidewalk after a harsh winter. The way she'd glance at me out of the corner of her eye, expecting me to cave, to come running back like I always had. The way she'd throw out those little comments, those thinly veiled attempts to bait me into reassuring her to smooth things over, to play my old role. And then one night at dinner in some trendy restaurant downtown, she finally snapped. "You've been acting strange lately," she said, trying to sound casual, like she was just making small talk about the weather. But there was a definite edge to her voice, sharp as a broken bottle. "Is something wrong?" I took a slow sip of my drink, met her gaze across the table. "Nope," I said. Simple, direct, no room for misinterpretation. She frowned, those perfectly sculpted eyebrows furrowing. "You sure?" "Yeah." Silence descended, thick and heavy, like the humidity in August. She was waiting, expecting me to jump in, to fix things, to comfort her, to smooth things over, like I always had, like it was my default setting. But I wasn't playing that role anymore. She'd spent so much time treating me like I was the lucky one, like I'd won some kind of lottery by being with her. But for the first time, I could see it in her eyes, a flicker of doubt, a hint of uncertainty. She was starting to wonder, just maybe, if she'd been the lucky one all along. I wasn't just done chasing her. I was done wasting my precious energy, my limited New York minutes, on someone who didn't appreciate it, who actively devalued it. For years, my entire focus had been on keeping our marriage afloat, making sure Jessica felt valued, making sure Jessica was happy, like her happiness was my sole purpose in life. But what about me? When was the last time I'd done something just for myself? Not to impress her, not to maintain the peace, but simply because I wanted to. Honestly, I couldn't even remember. So I made a choice. Right there and then, like drawing a line in the sand on Coney Island Beach. Instead of pouring all my effort, all my energy, all my damn soul into a woman who saw me as beneath her, as some kind of peasant begging for scraps, I turned my attention inward. The very first thing I did? Hit the gym. Hard. Started working out like a maniac, channeling all that pent-up frustration into iron and sweat. Started carrying myself differently, head held high, shoulders back, like I owned this city, not the other way around. And the funny thing, people noticed. Not just random people, strangers on the street. Women noticed. I wasn't actively looking for attention, wasn't trying to become some kind of player in the city scene, but I got it anyway. At work, at the gym, even just grabbing a drink at a bar in the village, women would strike up conversations, hold eye contact a little longer than necessary, flash those knowing smiles. And I realized something profound, something that shook me to my core. I hadn't needed Jessica's validation all along. I'd just been conditioned to seek it, trained like a dog to beg for treats, because for so long she had made me believe she was the only woman who mattered, the only source of worth in my life. She wasn't, not even close. I started dressing better too. Not in expensive, flashy suits from some designer on Fifth Avenue, just well-fitted, stylish clothes that made me feel good, confident, like I could walk into any room in this city and own it. Updated my haircut, started taking better care of my skin, the whole 9 yards. Every day I looked in the mirror, and I saw a version of myself that I hadn't seen in a long, long time. A man with options, a man who knew his worth, a man who wasn't defined by someone else's approval. And it wasn't just about my appearance. It was about everything. I threw myself into self-improvement on every level, like I was rebuilding myself from the ground up, stronger, better, faster. Started reading more, diving into books on everything from business strategy to philosophy. Took on new challenges at work, volunteered for the projects nobody else wanted, the ones that scared people, started networking like crazy, meeting influential people in my industry, making connections that would open doors I hadn't even known existed. Enrolled in courses, sharpened my skills, expanded my knowledge, became a sponge for anything that could make me better, smarter, more successful. I became a man who didn't just exist, who didn't just go through the motions. I thrived, like New York itself. Meanwhile, Jessica had started to really notice. At first, she tried to play it cool, act like nothing was different, like my sudden shift in focus, my newfound energy, my obvious improvements, didn't bother her in the slightest. But she wasn't fooling anyone, least of all me. I could see the way she watched me when I got dressed in the morning, the way her eyes lingered a little too long when she thought I wasn't paying attention, the way she'd subtly try to eavesdrop on my phone calls. She started asking questions, those casual, probing questions, like she was just curious, but I knew better. "You've been spending a lot of time at the gym lately," she'd say, voice dripping with fake nonchalance. "Trying to impress someone?" I'd just smile, a genuine, confident smile, not the forced, strained smile I used to wear around her, and wouldn't give her the reaction she wanted. "Just working on myself," I'd say, and leave it at that. She'd laugh, a short, brittle, forced laugh that didn't reach her eyes. "Well, don't get too fit," she'd say, trying to sound playful. "I liked you the way you were." I wouldn't respond, wouldn't give her the satisfaction of knowing she'd gotten under my skin, because the truth was, she hadn't cared how I looked before, hadn't given it a second thought. She just cared that now. Other people did. She wasn't used to this version of me, the one who didn't hang on her every word, who didn't constantly seek her approval, who didn't feel the desperate need to reassure her every 5 minutes that she was still the most amazing woman in the world. She had spent years, literally years, convincing herself that she was the prize, the ultimate catch, the irreplaceable treasure. But now, as she watched me transform, as she saw the attention I was suddenly attracting, she was starting to realize, with a dawning horror, that maybe, just maybe, I was the one worth winning all along. At first, she pretended like nothing was wrong, like my shift in focus, my obvious improvements, my growing detachment, were all things she barely even noticed, like background noise in the city. But I knew better. I could see the way she watched me now, with a different kind of intensity, a different kind of hunger. It wasn't with the same smugness, the same air of superiority she used to carry like a designer handbag. There was something else in her eyes now, something that almost looked like doubt. She wasn't used to this version of me, the one who didn't orbit around her, who didn't act like she was the center of my universe, the sun around which I revolved. And that's when the real shift started, the subtle but unmistakable change in her behavior, the desperate attempts to regain control. She began testing me, throwing out little remarks here and there, snide comments disguised as jokes, subtle attempts to get under my skin, to provoke me, to make me react, to make me prove I still cared. "You've been really into your looks lately," she said one night, as I was getting ready to head to the gym that had become my sanctuary, my escape, my temple of self-improvement. Didn't realize you were so insecure. I didn't even look at her, just kept tying my shoes, focused on my own purpose, my own goals. Well, spending that much time on yourself kind of screams midlife crisis, don't you think? She pressed, her voice dripping with sarcasm, with a desperate need to get a rise out of me. I just chuckled, a low, amused chuckle, not because she was funny, because she was anything but because I saw right through her pathetic little games, her transparent attempts to manipulate me. You can call it whatever you want, I said, finally looking up at her, my gaze steady, unwavering, as I grabbed my keys from the table. Doesn't change anything. And then I just left, walked out the door, leaving her standing there, speechless, stunned by my indifference. That was the moment, I think. The moment she truly realized something profound, something she hadn't considered before, something that shook her to her core. I wasn't reacting to her anymore. For years she had controlled the entire tone of our marriage, dictated the emotional climate of our relationship. If she was cold, I tried to warm things up. If she was dismissive, I worked harder for her attention. If she pushed me away, I chased after her, desperate to bridge the gap, to close the distance. But now she could say whatever she wanted, throw whatever little digs, whatever petty insults, whatever passive-aggressive bombs she felt like, and I just didn't care. I had options now, real options, a whole city full of possibilities, and that scared her, terrified her in a way that nothing else ever had. She started making excuses to be around me more, like a moth drawn to a suddenly brighter flame. If I was heading out to meet some friends for drinks downtown, she'd suddenly decide she wanted a date night, completely out of the blue, conveniently forgetting her usual disdain for anything less than a Michelin-starred restaurant. If I was on my phone, texting someone about work or making plans, she'd glance over my shoulder, casually ask, "Who are you texting?" Her voice laced with a forced lightness that didn't quite mask the underlying suspicion. If I was getting dressed up to go out, looking sharp and confident, she'd throw out some passive-aggressive comment like, "Hope whoever you're trying to impress likes that shirt." Her words dripping with a jealousy she couldn't quite hide. She was scrambling, desperately trying to reassert the control she once had, trying to pull me back into her orbit, to reestablish the old dynamic. But it was too late. The more she tried, the less I engaged. I wasn't rude, wasn't cruel, wasn't even actively trying to hurt her. I was just indifferent. And nothing, absolutely nothing, unnerved her more than that cold, calm, unwavering indifference. Then came the night she finally dropped the act, the carefully constructed facade of queenly indifference, the pretense of not caring. I was about to head out, meeting some new contacts for a late-night drink in the East Village, feeling good, feeling confident, feeling like myself again. She stopped me at the door, her voice softer than usual, almost vulnerable. "You don't look at me the same way anymore," she said, the words hanging in the air between us, heavy with unspoken meaning. I stopped, paused at the doorway, turned back to face her. She was standing there in the dim light of the hallway, arms crossed defensively, brows slightly furrowed, her usual mask of cool detachment finally slipping. For the first time in a long time, she wasn't speaking with arrogance, wasn't radiating that smug superiority. She looked uncertain, vulnerable, almost lost. I studied her for a long moment, really looked at her, saw past the designer clothes, the perfect makeup, the carefully crafted persona. Then I gave her the truth, the cold, hard, unvarnished truth she had been so desperately avoiding. "That's because I don't see you the same way anymore," I said, my voice calm, steady, devoid of emotion. Her lips parted slightly, like she wanted to say something, to argue, to deny, to plead, but no words came out. She just stood there, frozen, staring at me with a mixture of shock and dawning realization. I didn't wait for her to find the words, didn't give her the opportunity to try and manipulate me, to try and pull me back in. I just gave her a small, almost imperceptible nod, a silent farewell to the ghost of the woman I once loved, and walked out the door, because for the first time in years, I was finally living my life on my own terms, for myself, by myself, in this amazing, chaotic, vibrant city, and it felt incredible. After that night, things between us were fundamentally different, irrevocably changed. She knew it, I knew it. The unspoken chasm between us had become a gaping canyon. She stopped throwing those little jabs, stopped making the passive-aggressive remarks, stopped trying to act like she was still untouchable, still above it all, because deep down, I think she finally understood, with a cold, hard certainty, that she had lost something, something precious, something irreplaceable. Not me, not just me as a person, but she had lost the version of me that worshipped her, the version that hung onto her every word, the version that worked tirelessly, endlessly, to keep her happy, to earn her approval, the version that once believed, with every fiber of his being, that she was some kind of irreplaceable treasure, a diamond in the rough of New York. And now, faced with the reality of my indifference, faced with the prospect of losing me completely, she was starting to panic, a slow, creeping, insidious panic that was eating away at her carefully constructed facade. She became more affectionate, suddenly, out of nowhere, like a switch had flipped, touching my arm when she spoke, laughing at my jokes a little too hard, lingering in the kitchen when I made coffee in the morning, as if waiting for me to notice her, to acknowledge her, to give her the attention she craved. But I wasn't playing that game anymore. I wasn't rewarding her sudden change in behavior, wasn't falling for her desperate attempts to win me back. Then came the night that shattered her illusion completely, the night that finally broke through her denial and forced her to confront the reality of what she had done, what she had lost. We were at a party, one of those crowded, noisy gatherings with mutual friends, the kind of classic New York social scene event. Lots of people, lots of energy, everyone buzzing with ambition and excitement. The kind of event where she used to shine, where she expected to be the absolute center of attention, admired, envied, the queen bee of the social hive. But this time, everything was different. This time, she wasn't the one people were looking at, wasn't the one drawing all the attention. I was. I had changed, transformed, become a different person entirely. And people noticed my newfound confidence, my easygoing presence, my vibrant energy. It was all different now, radiating outwards like a force field. I wasn't the man who once stood quietly at her side, a shadow in her spotlight, while she absorbed all the attention, basked in the admiration of others. I wasn't the dutiful husband, nodding along politely as she spoke endlessly about herself, her accomplishments, her opinions. I was the one people were drawn to now, the one conversations naturally flowed towards, the one who held court with ease and charm. Women included. Attractive, intelligent, confident women. Women who were genuinely interested in me, in who I was, in what I had to say. I saw her watching me from across the crowded room, her eyes narrowed, her expression a mixture of disbelief and growing fury. I could feel her gaze on me, burning into my back like a physical weight, and for the first time, maybe ever, she was the one who felt small, insignificant, overshadowed. She stormed over, cutting through the crowd like a knife, stepping directly between me and the woman I was talking to, a smart, funny lawyer I'd just met, who was actually engaging in a real conversation with me, not just listening politely while I fawned over her.
"What are you doing?"
Jessica snapped, her voice tight with barely suppressed rage, her eyes flashing with something close to desperation, a raw, exposed vulnerability I'd never seen before. I raised an eyebrow, a calm, unhurried gesture, and turned to face her, my expression neutral, unreadable. "What do you mean?" I asked, playing it cool, letting her stew in her own insecurity. Her arms crossed defensively, her body language screaming possessiveness, territoriality. "I'm your wife," she hissed, as if that single statement should explain everything, should magically reassert her dominance, her control. I let those words hang in the air for a moment, heavy and ironic, pregnant with unspoken truths. Then, with a calm, almost gentle expression, I simply said, "You always said you were the prize." I paused, let the words sink in, let her face the full weight of her own arrogance, her own self-delusion. Then I smiled, a small, knowing, slightly pitying smile, and finished my sentence. "Well, I stopped competing." Her face froze, all the color draining out of it, leaving her pale and shocked. For the first time since this whole shift had started, since I had begun to reclaim my own life, she had no response, no witty retort, no cutting remark, no manipulative tactic. She just stood there, silent, stunned, utterly defeated, and for once, I didn't feel the need to fill the void, didn't feel the urge to smooth things over, to offer explanations or justifications. I didn't argue. I didn't explain myself. I simply turned, calmly, deliberately, and walked away, back into the crowd, back into my own life, leaving her standing there alone, isolated in her suddenly shattered illusion. And as I walked away, I knew with a certainty that resonated deep within my bones that she finally understood, finally grasped what it felt like to be the one left behind, the one suddenly irrelevant, the one no longer chased, no longer desired, no longer valued. After that night, everything changed. For real this time. She stopped pretending, dropped the act completely. The facade of confidence, the carefully constructed superiority, the pretense of being untouchable, it all crumbled, like a poorly built sandcastle washed away by the tide. In its place stood a woman who had finally, truly, realized the devastating weight of her mistake, the magnitude of what she had thrown away, the depth of the hole she had dug for herself. And just as I had expected, just as I had predicted, she tried, desperately, frantically, to fix things, to rewind the clock, to undo the damage she had inflicted. Suddenly, she was cooking my favorite meals again, meals she hadn't bothered to make in years, meals that used to be commonplace in our early days, when she was still trying to impress me, still trying to win me over. She was asking about my day, genuinely interested, actually listening to my answers, something she hadn't done in what felt like a lifetime. She was laughing at my jokes, even the bad ones, laughing a little too hard, a little too eagerly, trying to recapture the easy camaraderie we once shared, the effortless connection that had long since vanished. She was complimenting me, showering me with praise, telling me how good I looked, how smart I was, how funny I was, like she used to when we were first falling in love, when she was still trying to build me up, still trying to make me feel like I was worthy of her. She became more affectionate, more physically demonstrative, reaching for my hand while we watched TV, standing in the doorway as I got dressed in the morning, hoping I'd look at her, really look at her, the way I once did, with love, with desire, with adoration. But I couldn't. I just couldn't. She wasn't that woman anymore. Wasn't the woman I had fallen in love with, the woman I had promised to spend my life with. That woman, the real Jessica, had been kind, supportive, genuinely cared about my happiness, someone who valued our relationship as a true partnership, a shared journey. This version, this shell of a woman who had spent years acting as if she was doing me a favor by being my wife, as if I was lucky to be in her orbit. She had buried whatever love I once had for her, suffocated it with her arrogance, her entitlement, her constant need for validation at my expense. I didn't hate her, not really. I just didn't care anymore. The emotional connection was severed, the spark extinguished, the flame long gone. And she must have sensed it, felt the cold, empty space where my love used to be. Because one night, her voice trembling slightly, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and desperation, she finally asked the question she had been avoiding, the question that had been hanging in the air between us for weeks, unspoken but ever present. Are we okay? I looked at her for a long moment, really looked at her, considering how to answer, weighing the truth against the desire to soften the blow, to spare her the pain she had so carelessly inflicted on me for so long. She stood in the kitchen, arms crossed tightly, bracing herself for the impact of my words, her entire posture radiating anxiety and apprehension. So I told her the truth, the simple, brutal, undeniable truth. No, I said, my voice quiet but firm, unwavering. We're not. Her eyes flickered, filled with something raw and painful, panic, sadness, maybe even, finally, regret. I can do better, she said quickly, desperately, her voice cracking with emotion. I see it now. I was wrong. So wrong. I nodded, slowly, deliberately. Yeah, I said, meeting her gaze directly, unflinchingly. you were. Silence stretched between us, thick and suffocating, broken only by the distant sounds of the city outside our apartment walls. She waited, her eyes pleading, desperately searching mine for any sign of hope, any flicker of forgiveness, any indication that there might still be a chance, a glimmer of redemption. But there was nothing left to say, nothing left to offer. That's when it finally hit her, the full, devastating weight of her actions, the irreversible nature of what she had done. I was done. Completely, irrevocably done. A few days later, I filed for divorce, not out of anger, not out of revenge, not to punish her for her arrogance and her cruelty, simply because I no longer wanted this life, this empty shell of a marriage, this one-sided charade. I didn't need her to be happy, didn't need her approval to feel worthy. I had rebuilt myself, regained my confidence, rediscovered my own value, and finally remembered something crucial, something I should have known all along. I was never lacking, never deficient, never less than. The only thing that had ever held me back, the only thing that had ever made me feel inadequate, was believing she was irreplaceable. She wasn't. After I left, after I moved on, after I started living my own life, truly living it, I heard from mutual friends that she struggled, that she wasn't doing well. She wasn't the prize she had once believed herself to be. The pedestal she had stood on, the imaginary throne she had constructed for herself, had disappeared, vanished into thin air, and the attention she had taken for granted, the constant validation she had come to expect as her due, was nowhere to be found. And me? I was thriving. I was in the best shape of my life, physically and mentally, excelling in my career, making more money than ever, traveling to exotic places, meeting new people, expanding my horizons in ways I had never imagined possible. I had options, endless options, a whole world of possibilities opening up before me, like a panoramic view from the top of the world. And for the first time in years, maybe for the first time in my adult life, I was truly, genuinely happy. She once thought she was the one worth chasing, the one I should be fighting for, the ultimate prize to be won. But in the end, it was me who walked away, without a second thought, without a backward glance, without ever looking back.